Hi, my name is Elizabeth Wagner. I'm a hand weaver and a textile designer. Welcome to my channel, Illumination. In these videos, I'd like to present weaving for any type of beginner weaver that may want to know in detail how all the steps of the process of hand weaving work. And as I was preparing to describe how to configure a project, I realized that a little explanation about yarn would be very helpful. So I wanted to give you just a short overview of yarn and the different types of yarn and how they work in weaving. And so I put out a couple of different types of yarn, and I'm starting with cotton because it's the most common type of yarn that I think weavers use. It's a pretty versatile type of fiber and comes in all different sizes. This one is a plain unmercerized cotton. The mercerization process makes the cotton more shiny, and this is unmercerized. So this cotton is used a lot in applications for weaving dish towels and pot holders, or any kind of table linens, or anything that you need to be absorbent. The different sizes of yarns have different numbers associated with them. Usually you'll see a yarn that has a number like a 10-2 or an 8-2 or a 22, and you'll see it written like 20/2. And that means, that describes the size of the actual yarn. In wool or cotton or silk, any of the yarns will be described that way. The 20, or the larger number, would be the actual gauge of one ply. So if you have a 22 cotton, the 2 means there are 2 plies. So this one is probably a 2-ply. It's pretty fine, so I'm not going to pull it apart. I'll show you that a little bit later. But this is the same type of material, but it's gone through a mercerization process, and it gives it a little bit of a sheen. This right here is a linen, and it's a plant-based fiber as well as cotton. And you can see that it's a little bit stiffer. It's not as drapey. This material right here is half cotton and half linen. So they call that cotolin. These are all about the same size, but they come in all different sizes and gauges, from very fine to very bulky. This right here is just a skein that I pulled out to show you of some of the hand-spun wool that I made, just so I could show you how the plies are a little bit separate. You can see it. I think most people who have worked with yarn to any degree is familiar with plies, and you can see that you can break this down into 2 separate pieces, and each one of those is a ply. When they twist together, you get a 2-ply or 3-ply, depending on how many plies are twisted together. This right here is silk, so you can see how shiny and drapey it is. It's just very loose and slick. So a lot of people would use something like that for a drapey object like a scarf or a shawl. This is similar look to silk. It's called tencel, and it's made from a plant-based fiber. It's also got a nice sheen, and it's very drapey. So it acts a lot like silk when you're using it and wearing it. This is a type of wool. There are lots of types of sheep's wool. This one happens to be a Coopworth wool, and you can see that this one is also twisted or plied. That would be kind of a medium weight, and it's used for a lot of different things that would need to be a warm object like a shawl or a blanket. This is very soft wool. It's called alpaca, and you may have heard of it before. It's from an animal that resembles a llama. They usually raise them in South America, although there are a lot of alpaca farms here in the U.S. now. But this is a really desirable wool. It's very soft, and it's extremely warm. I've been told that it's 7 times warmer than regular sheep's wool, and it can be also hyperallergenic. So a lot of people who are allergic to regular wool can use alpaca without a problem. This is also alpaca, and you can see that this one is plied too. They're very soft, and they make beautiful scarves and garments. You can even use them for something close to the skin. This right here is another type of wool. It is called mohair, and you can see that it's very fuzzy and hairy and sort of looks itchy. Some people use this in blankets. Usually I don't use it in a warp when I'm weaving, but I will use it in weft, or sometimes alternating it in the warp with cotton or something silkier, because it tends to stick to itself very easily, and so it gets to be a little difficult to work with on the loom if it's next to each other. So I usually use that in the weft, but it also is very warm and has a lot of body. This is kind of an exotic fiber. This is yak fiber. It looks a lot like alpaca or regular sheep's wool. It's also very warm, and I just brought it to show you the different types of fibers. There are also a lot of exotic fibers that are going on out on the market, including stuff like bamboo, paper fiber, cashmere, of course, you probably have heard of, which is quite expensive. And this one is sort of a blend between the alpaca and the yak. It's sort of a 50-50 blend. But I just wanted to demonstrate that there are so many different sizes and types of fiber to choose from. And as you work with everything, you'll get sort of the feel for how each one acts when you weave with it and how much it shrinks up when you're done with it. On these cards, you can see some of the sizes compared to this fine yarn. This is a very bulky yarn, and I pulled this one apart so you could see the plies easier too. This would be a 3-ply, and twisted together you get a single piece. These right here are called singles because they are not plied. It's just one piece. It's still twisted, but it's not 2 pieces twisted together. So if it were plied, it would look something, like this when you used it. But these are just singles, which aren't really appropriate too much for warp because the singles don't have the strength of being plied to another yarn. Sometimes you just have to be careful about how strong the yarn is, because the warp is under a lot of pressure, a lot of tension on the loom, and it has to be extremely strong. So I just wanted to let you see some of the different fiber options, and when I make my project, I'm going to use a wool, merino wool, and I'll be using this hand-spun wool for the weft. So I appreciate you watching this little information video, and I think it'll help us going into the setup of the process of calculating our warp and our weft and our project to put on the loom. Thanks a lot, and let's see what we can make.